Hey guys, Ducktown here, and today I will be reviewing every episode of Radio Show Season 1. So, I looked at PieGuyRulz video, and you know what I thought? I was thinking, nobody's done one of these for Radio Show, so maybe I should. So, that's what I'm doing. I'm starting with Season 1 today. Season 1 is 12 episodes only. Also, I'm gonna have the writers up, and there's gonna be 5 categories for how I rate the episode. Abysmal, bad, meh, good, and admirable. Okay? So those are my categories. So let's get started. Episode 1, The Power. Okay, so this is the first episode of the show, and fun fact, Mark Hamill plays most of the background characters. My favorite part was when Mordecai and Rigby were wishing for random stuff like the castle bounce house. And there's the quote, "A bunch of baby ducks, send them to the moon. Soda machine that doesn't work, send it to the moon." So this episode was written by J.G. Quintel, the creator of the show, and to be honest, it's actually probably the edgiest episode of this show, except for maybe the Unicorns Have Got to Go or Party Pete. It has a lot of adult jokes and Rigby even cusses, so yeah. So is this a bad episode, or is it a good episode? Or is it in between? Or is it admirable or abysmal? It's a good episode. Most of the jokes are relatively funny. It's well put together and well paced, and the characters are in character and likable. Episode 2, Just Set Up the Chairs. Okay, so this episode actually has a lot of references to like 80s video games. When Mordecai and Rigby find the vintage video games, like there's a lot of reference to actual video games from the 80s, I think. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. My quote over there, "You idiots," it was just real. I liked Benson's rage quit in this episode, but my favorite part had to be the epic fight scene between the video game bosses. Also, I thought it was kind of interesting that Sam Martin used a different voice on Muscle Man. It was like, "We are here to pick you up." So yeah, but is it a good episode, or is it a bad episode, or is it neither? It's a good episode. I mean, most of the jokes are funny. It's not ridiculously, like, the characters are a little bit annoying, but they're not terrible. Episode 3, Caffeinated Concert Tickets. Fun fact, Margaret makes her debut in this episode. So, this episode is kind of the first episode that, like, involves, like, a creature. Like, the other episodes before this, like, just involved, like, weird situations. But, like, this is the first one that, like, involves a near human-sized creature. Just saying that. I like the coffee bean. He's pretty funny. I like that he just says coffee. I mean, it's it's pretty good. And yeah, this episode is definitely kind of strange. I mean, Mordecai and Rigby kind of get unfairly treated, if you ask me. I mean, it's kind of mean-spirited towards them. But is it a good episode? Is it a bad episode? Or is it neither? It's a bad episode. Yeah, it's really mean-spirited towards Mordecai and Rigby, even though they don't really do much wrong. Also, well, there was a part I did like. My favorite part had to have been when Working for the Weekend was playing. But otherwise, I didn't really like the episode that much. I mean, the comedy was hit or miss. It wasn't really. It was mean spirited. Plus, Margaret's boyfriend was a complete jerk. Episode 4, Death Punchies. So this is the first episode to have the Death Kwon Do stuff with the Master and stuff. This episode was definitely a very action-packed and interesting episode. I mean, I liked the whole mullet and tacky jeans thing. It was kind of creative and interesting, and it was kind of like a joke to like really bad 80s fashion. So, do I what my favorite part of the episode had to have been when Rigby was getting ready to the death do the death punch. I really liked that part of the episode. If I do have to lodge one complaint, even though this is borderline nitpicking, I don't like Mordecai's mullet. Like, I understand it's supposed to look kind of crappy and tacky, but it would have looked better if it was blue. I know that's borderline nitpicking, but it was really ugly and crappy looking. But that's just a small complaint. So is it a good episode, a bad episode, or a meh episode? It's a meh episode. Yeah, surprise, it's a meh episode. It wasn't really the best episode, but I mean, it wasn't really terrible. Some of the comedy worked, but Rigby was kind of mean and out of character, so that's what held this episode back a little bit. Episode 5, Free Cake. Yeah, so this episode is the first episode that has the Guardians of Eternal Youth. And my favorite part was Mordecai reacting to get vanilla cake, because personally I love chocolate cake way more than I like vanilla. I don't hate vanilla cake or anything, I just really like chocolate more than it. So, yeah, that was funny. I will say one thing about this episode. This isn't really a complaint or anything, but I don't recommend you watching it around your little siblings, because the part where Skips turns to dust is pretty terrifying. So, yeah, just don't watch it around your 5-year-old. Just saying. Yeah, so it was a pretty good episode. I mean, comedy was pretty decent, like the Muscle Man strip joke. So you already guessed it, but this is a good episode. Yeah, I liked it. It's good. I mean, you really can't do much better than this unless you like do something really incredible. Like this is on the higher side of good. Episode 6, Meet Your Maker. So this episode is one of the first episodes that has multiple villains. It's the hot dogs. My favorite part was the Mordecai interrupting Rigby's dream when he was with Margaret. He's like, Mordecai, I fixed it. So, fun fact, Tim Curry plays the hot dog leader. So yeah, you will probably already guess this, but it's a good episode. I mean, there are a lot of things that this episode does correctly, like comedy, and it gets the villain thing right. Also, there is a twist at the end. It's not a huge plot twist, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Episode 7, Grilled Cheese Deluxe. Okay, so right off the bat, I want to get it out of the way, but this episode does comedy probably very good. Like, take the quote. These fine men are astronauts. They fought for our countries. That's something some random lady said to Mordecai and Rigby. But it's funny because you realize that they're not like soldiers, which means that she's pretty stupid. So yeah, this episode has pretty good comedy, and then I also like it because it shows the difference between Mordecai and Rigby's stupidity, kind of like in Meet Your Maker, which was the previous episode. So is it a good episode, a bad episode, or a meh episode? It's a meh episode. I mean, it's kind of mean-spirited towards Mordecai and Rigby, considering Mordecai really didn't do that much wrong, but it's not terrible. I mean, it's on the upper side of meh, to be honest. Episode 8, The Unicorns Have Got to Go. Oh my gosh, this episode is awesome. If for several different reasons. So, for example, I love the unicorns. I like how Sam Martin uses like the most obnoxiously hilarious voice possible, and some other guy named SS Bullrock also does a pretty good job. So the unicorns are really funny. Plus, this episode is really edgy. Kind of it's probably the edgiest episode of the show, except for like I said, the Power and maybe Party Pete. So yeah, it's a pretty good episode. And then I had the quote there. Oh no, bro, you don't use due time to get the ladies. You used to get the horror unicorns. Don't worry, we know all about the ladies. So yeah, it's a pretty. So is it a good episode or is it an admirable episode? It's an admirable episode. Yeah, I'm not joking. I love this episode. I love the moral it teaches. I love the character development with Rigby. It's just a good episode in general. Plus, there's lots of adult jokes that actually work. Episode 9, Prank Callers. Okay, so fun fact. There was a rumor going around, well, more like a theory, that this show takes place in the 1980s, but unfortunately this episode kind of killed that theory. So, let's talk about this episode. Is it any good? Well, we're gonna find out. So, anyway, Mordecai and Rigby do this prank calling thing, and it gets this one guy mad. The plot is very interesting. Also, my favorite part was the travel time scene when they're going back and the phones start to get older, and you see all the dates and stuff. I like that part the best. It's actually one of my favorite parts of the entire series. So, is it a good episode or is it a bad episode? It's a meh episode. Yeah, I know. I really wanted to put this as a good episode, but there are just a lot of problems with it that I didn't notice the first time I watched it, so I'm going to put it back a little bit. Episode 10, Dawn. Okay, so I really like this episode a lot like in the other episodes. Here's the thing. I actually do have a younger brother like Rigby. although he doesn't really outshine me, it is kind of like a relatable episode, and I kind of see how some people would like it. Also, I like the sugar quote. Sugar. And I thought it was funny how his license plate said sugar too. My favorite part was Rigby and his brother like becoming close again, like at the end. It also I like the epic like computer takeover scene. That was pretty awesome too. Also, Mordecai is really in character and he's acts really great throughout the entire episode, even though he doesn't contribute the most to the plot out of any of the characters. So yeah, it's a really good episode. Like I said, in fact, it was edging on almost being an admirable episode. Episode 11, Rigby's Body. Okay, so, fun fact, Jeff Bennett voices High Five Ghost in this episode. Technically, he voiced him throughout the entire series, but he doesn't really say very many lines, except for in this episode. Even then, he doesn't get to say much. So, my favorite part was when Rigby was in the body cast, he was talking to Mordecai, he's like, well, Mordecai, I guess you were right about the snack bar being lame. It's funny because you know that he's not really that hurt. Like, you know that he got hit and it hurts pretty bad, but, like, you know he's overplaying it a little bit. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting episode. Also, it gets a lot of things right. It's a believable story. So, is it a good episode, a meh episode, or is it an admirable episode? It's a good episode. It's interesting, it's funny, and Muscle Man's flip out is pretty good too. Episode 12, Mordecai and the Rigbys. Okay, so this episode has the same running gag that I don't like, that has Margaret's boyfriend. It's a different guy this time, and he's not as much of a jerk as the guy from Caffeinated concert tickets, but I still don't really like him. It's not as bad, but seriously, stop doing it. It's not funny. Also, this episode involves time travel, and does a pretty good job of getting it right. I mean, it's believable. Also, it's kind of funny how the future Mordecai and Rigby have like British Australian accents. So, is this a good episode, a meh episode, a bad episode, or is it something else entirely? It's a good episode. I mean, it's funny. Rigby acts goofy and comedy-ish, and Mordecai stands up for what's right, which is my favorite part of the episode. Also, Sean Seasley actually composed Party Tonight for his band a couple years back. So yeah, it's a pretty good episode. Definitely one I would watch again. Good season finale in my opinion.